A reporter thought he could humiliate Barron Trump in front of a crowd. He had no idea what was about to happen next. The grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria in Beverly Hills sparkled under the dazzling chandeliers, each crystal reflecting the wealth and status of those in attendance. This wasn't just another gathering, it was the event, a charity gala where the elite didn't just come to donate but to be seen. The air carried the rich aroma of expensive cologne and aged whiskey, blending with the polished conversations of moguls, Hollywood elites, and political insiders. Some guests arrived for the networking, others for the spectacle, and then there were those who thrived on the drama, the calculated, quiet social moves that could build or break reputations overnight. Among the sea of designer tuxedos and shimmering gowns, Barron Trump stood out, not because he tried to, but because he didn't. At 18, he was already taller than most men in the room, his presence impossible to ignore. He carried his father's stature but moved with a different energy, quieter, more reserved, yet undeniably composed. He wasn't there to impress. He wasn't there to play politics. But that didn't mean the room wasn't watching him. "That's him, right?" a woman in a deep emerald dress whispered, leaning toward her companion. "Yeah. He's grown a lot," the man beside her muttered, taking a sip from his whiskey glass. "Hard to believe he's already 18. I wonder if he's like his father," another voice chimed in, just low enough to seem discreet but loud enough to be overheard. That was the question, wasn't it? Since the moment Barron Trump had first appeared in public, the world had speculated about him. Would he be another heir to the family legacy? Would he step into politics? Or was he just another privileged kid who would eventually fade into the background once the headlines moved on? But what no one considered, what no one even thought to ask, was who Barron Trump actually was. Across the room, a man adjusted his tie, his smirk not quite reaching his eyes as he observed Barron. Michael Rower, a journalist known for his sharp critiques and ruthless takedowns. A seasoned commentator with a well-documented disdain for the Trump family, he had spent years analyzing their every move, twisting their words into headlines. And now, standing by the bar, absent-mindedly swirling his drink, he saw an opportunity. Rower wasn't just any guest. He was a strategic presence, the kind of person who always positioned himself where the conversation was hottest. And tonight, that conversation was Barron Trump. "Rich kids always fold when you hit them with a little reality," Rower had once said on his podcast while discussing the children of high-profile figures. "They've never had to fight for anything. They break under pressure." Under pressure. But tonight, Rower wasn't behind a microphone. He was in the same room, just a few steps away. And if he played his cards right, he could turn Barron Trump into his next big headline. Setting his glass down, he straightened his cuffs and made his way toward him. But Barron... He wasn't the easy target Rower assumed he'd be. Michael Rower moved through the crowd like a man who had spent years navigating rooms like this. He was used to being the smartest one in any conversation, the one who could dismantle an argument with a smirk or a well-placed remark. But tonight, he wasn't looking for a debate. He was looking for a moment. And Barron Trump? The perfect target. Rower understood how high society worked. You don't attack someone outright. You nudge them, prod them, make a comment just sharp enough to sting but light enough to pass as playful banter. It was an art, and Rower, he was a master of it. Reaching Barron, he stopped just close enough to command attention, but not enough to seem aggressive. Conversations around them softened, as if people felt something was about to unfold. With a knowing smirk, Rower raised his glass in a mock toast. "Well, if it isn't the young prince himself," he said, voice smooth, just loud enough for those nearby to catch. A few guests exchanged glances. Some chuckled under their breath, unsure whether to engage. Others sipped their drinks, watching Barron, waiting to see how he would react. But Barron, he didn't flinch. He barely even acknowledged the remark. Unbothered, Rower took a slow sip before continuing. Must be nice, he mused, dragging out the words. Growing up in a golden tower, never knowing a day of struggle. I imagine life's been effortless. A few hushed chuckles rippled through the group. It wasn't a direct attack, but it was enough to stir the air. Yet Barron stood still. If the words affected him, he didn't show it. Rower tilted his head slightly, watching. He had seen men much older than Barron squirm under pressure, stumble over their words, try to laugh off the discomfort. But Barron, he didn't fidget. He didn't force a grin. He just stood there, unreadable. Taking another sip, Rower let the silence drag before delivering the next line. You ever had a real problem, Barron? He let the words linger. Ever had to worry about rent? About your future? Or have you always known you could just sign your name and get whatever you want? This time, the laughter was louder. Not from the whole room, just a handful of people who recognized what was happening. A test. Barron finally shifted. Not in discomfort. Not in anger. Just a slow, measured breath, as if calculating the moment. Rower could feel the energy shift. This was it. The moment where the rich kid either stumbled or walked away, proving his point without him having to say another word. But something in Barron's expression changed. Not defeat. Not amusement. Something else entirely. And then, for the first time, he spoke. And Rower. He was about to regret pushing him. For a moment, the air in the ballroom grew heavy, as if everyone was waiting for something they weren't sure was coming. Barron Trump, the son of a former president, the subject of endless speculation, had just been challenged in front of the most powerful people in the country. But he didn't react the way they expected. He didn't laugh nervously. He didn't glance around for support. He didn't brush it off like a politician's kid trained in damage control. Instead, he let the moment hang. The silence stretched, letting Rower's words linger, unchallenged, just long enough for him to think he had won. But then, Barron finally spoke. You know, Mr. Rower, he began, voice calm, steady. I could act like your question is original, but it's not. People have been saying things like that to me for years. They assume privilege erases struggle, that having wealth means life is effortless. The shift in the room was instant. A few guests who had laughed earlier, they fell silent. Others leaned in, sensing this wasn't the response they had expected. Rower's smirk. It faltered, just slightly, because Barron, he wasn't just speaking to him anymore. He was speaking to everyone. I didn't choose my last name, he continued, expression unreadable. I didn't ask for cameras in my face before I was even old enough to drive. I never signed up for every moment of my childhood to be picked apart, criticized, and turned into a headline. Someone near the bar shifted awkwardly, setting their glass down with a faint clink. Barron exhaled, then took a single step forward. Not aggressive, not defensive, just present. You say I've never struggled? Fine. Let's talk about struggle. His tone never rose. But the weight behind it? It did. Rower blinked. Imagine being 15 years old, watching grown men on national television mock you, knowing you can't say a word back. Imagine walking into a classroom and realizing half the people there already hate you, just because of your last name. Imagine knowing that, no matter what you do, people will assume they know who you are before you even open your mouth. A murmur rippled through the room. Quiet, but there. Rower started to speak, But Barron cut him off. Not with force. With a simple, unshaken truth. No, I've never had to worry about rent. I've never had to wonder where my next meal was coming from. But don't mistake that for never knowing what it's like to feel completely alone, even in a crowded room. And just like that, the balance shifted. Rower, the seasoned journalist, the man who had spent years leading the conversation, he suddenly found himself in unfamiliar territory, because Barron wasn't playing the role he had expected, and for the first time in years, the people in that room, and soon the world, weren't just talking about Barron Trump. They were listening to him. The silence that followed wasn't just the absence of laughter. It was heavy, the kind that makes people shift in their seats, suddenly unsure of the rules of engagement. Rower stood frozen, a second too long. His smirk gone. He had walked into this expecting a sound bite, something he could twist, mock, spin into another viral takedown. But instead, he had handed Barron Trump something far more powerful. A moment. Then, from the back of the room, a single clap. Not sarcastic. Not mocking. Just recognition. A second later, another. Then another. Within seconds, slow, deliberate applause rippled across the ballroom. This wasn't an eruption of cheers. This wasn't a rally. But it was genuine. And that, more than anything, made it powerful. Rower swallowed, shifting slightly. He could feel the weight of 100 gazes on him now, not in admiration, but scrutiny. A waiter near the drinks table discreetly pulled out his phone, angling it just enough to capture what was happening. He wasn't alone. Several journalists, influencers, and high-profile guests had already started recording. This moment, it wasn't staying in that ballroom. The first video hit Twitter at 11:47 p.m., a grainy, slightly shaky clip of Barron's speech. Then another, and another. Within an hour, the hashtag Barron Trump was trending. Not just in the US, worldwide. Some highlighted his poise. Others focused on one specific line. Don't mistake privilege for never knowing what it's like to feel alone in a crowded room. A viral tweet. Over 300,000 likes. Whether you like him or not, the kid just cooked a professional journalist on his own turf. A TikTok comment. 1.2 million views. The media machine scrambled to catch up. Conservative networks. They praised him. Liberal ones. They tried to downplay it, calling it a well-rehearsed PR moment. But even the most cynical journalists had to admit, it didn't feel rehearsed. It felt real. Even celebrities chimed in. Some defended Rower. He was just asking a fair question. But others, including a few unexpected names, they voiced their respect. But perhaps the most surprising reaction, it came from young people, teenagers, college students, people who had never paid much attention to Barron Trump before. For once, this isn't about politics. It's about a kid who's been dragged through the mud his whole life, finally getting to speak for himself. A TikTok video. 5 million views overnight. Meanwhile, Rower went silent. No interviews. No tweets. He ignored emails. The man who had built his career on controlling the narrative. He was now trapped in one he couldn't escape. By morning, the entire country was talking about Barron Trump, not as an extension of his father, but as himself. For the first time, Barron Trump was being seen as his own person. And this time, the conversation wasn't being dictated by the media. It was being shaped by the people. By sunrise, The moment had already outgrown the ballroom. It was everywhere. Morning talk shows, op-eds, social media. News anchors dissected every second of the exchange, while political analysts scrambled to assign meaning to it. Some praised Barron's composure under pressure. Others called it a media stunt. But no matter what side people took, one thing was clear. People were talking. On Fox News, a panel of commentators nodded in approval. The kid handled himself better than most politicians today. On CNN, a different take. Look, no one's saying he's a bad kid, but let's not pretend he's struggling like the average American. Even the New York Times ran an editorial. A new Trump rises. Barron's unexpected moment in the spotlight. But the conversation? It wasn't just about what he said. It was about who was reacting. Some doubled down, dismissing him completely. "What does he know about real hardship?" tweeted a well-known left-wing activist. Others pointed out a deeper hypocrisy. Why is it okay to attack a Trump kid, but not anyone else's? A conservative influencer questioned. But the most surprising voices? They came from those who had never defended him before. "I'm not a Trump fan. But this was different. He handled that better than I would have." The debate even spilled into late-night TV. Comedians treaded carefully. "Look, I'll be honest," one host admitted. "I was ready to roast him. But damn." That was a solid response. Even celebrities weighed in. Some praised him. Others mocked him. A well-known actress tweeted, "Rich kid pretends to have problems, and the internet eats it up. What else is new?" But then, the responses came flooding in. "So you can advocate for mental health when it's convenient, but not when it's someone you don't like?" And that was the moment the conversation shifted. The biggest surprise? Gen Z and millennials, many of whom had never paid any attention to Barron Trump before. Doesn't matter who his dad is. That hit deep. A TikTok comment, 100K likes. People act like being rich means you can't feel isolated. That's not how it works. A viral Instagram post. And suddenly, Barron Trump wasn't just a political surname anymore. He had become something else. A symbol. A moment. A shift. No one knew yet what it meant. But one thing was certain. For the first time in years, people were seeing him. And that was something no one had planned for. The media storm raged on for days. Some networks framed the moment as a one-time anomaly. Others tried to stretch it into something bigger. A cultural shift. A new political figure emerging. But Barron, he didn't engage. No interviews. No statements. No carefully worded social media post. He just moved forward. And that, in itself, sent a message. Because this wasn't just about Barron Trump. It was about perception. About how easy it is to judge people we've never met. About how a last name can become a prison before you even get a chance to define yourself. It was about how public figures, especially those born into power, are often treated as symbols, rather than human beings. Some people changed their minds about Barron that night. Others didn't. But for the first time in years, people actually saw him, not as an extension of his father, not as a headline, but as a young man standing on his own. And whether they liked him or not, they had to admit, he had earned his moment, because people, they're more than the labels placed on them, more than the assumptions made about them. And sometimes, the best way to challenge a narrative isn't through outrage. It's not through defensiveness. It's through quiet, undeniable truth. Barron Trump didn't argue. He didn't attack. He simply spoke. And by doing that, he forced people to listen. Not everyone will get that opportunity. But when the moment comes, when someone questions your worth, your experiences, your place in the world, you have a choice. You can shrink, or you can stand your ground and make them see you. So, what do you think? Should people be judged by their family? Or should they be given the chance to define themselves? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.